For years, Indigenous people have been misrepresented in various types of media. For example, movies like Peter Pan or Pocahontas, TV shows like Yellowstone or Star Trek, or even books like Little House on the Prairie by Laura Wilder or Out Under the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. Now, before I get into this, I want to acknowledge that I'm currently on the unceded territories of the Anaklagma and Secwepemc people. And as you can see, this beautiful land has been really good to me and my peers and my family for the outdoor experiences that it brings, such as snowboarding or hiking. And I think that all of us guests on this land should treat the land, give back, and really appreciate it for its beauty. The most common ways that Indigenous people are misrepresented in sources like these are by romanticization, which is basically making something seem better than it is, or by misrepresentation by omission, which is leaving out crucial details, often creating a false picture. There's also stereotyping, which is an overly simplified image of a specific group. Fortunately, we have seen improvements over time, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to address these misrepresentations. Media, among other things, determines society's views on topics. This results in something we've all heard of called bias, which is defined as a favor for or against a thing, person, or group compared with another. As much as you may think you are or aren't biased, everyone has their own biases, whether explicit, which are biases you know you have, or implicit, which are biases that you don't really know you have, but are really determined by how you kind of grew up. For example, an explicit bias that I have is that I think chocolate ice cream is superior to any other flavor. Biases can apply to anything in life, whether it's your food preferences or your political choices or in media. As much as I can try not to be biased in certain situations, it'll always be part of what makes me, me. With that being said, it's important for us in media to either avoid these biases or confront them and state them up front. If you choose to avoid these biases, you could do that by speaking only objectively and directly from sources and trying your hardest to not try to sway your viewers a certain way. You can do this by really carefully choosing your selection of words, but that's really hard. Trust me, it's really hard. But if you're upfront with your bias and you're blunt about it, you can tell your viewers or your audience that you are swaying a specific way. This way you can tell your personal opinions on a specific topic, and then you won't really have many problems. With that being said, it's important for us to be properly educated on the history of Indigenous people. That can allow us to sway our biases in media when on the topic of Indigenous people the right way. This will also eliminate any possible misrepresentations in any of the media that we create. You want to be in it? Like, this is an Indigenous person.
Yeah.
Go away, man. Stories that are told by Indigenous people can really shine some light on the true history and culture. These stories are also inspiring, and throughout my research, I found a story that stood out to me because it makes readers think of the way Indigenous cultures are stripped of their identities. The story also connects to some of the things that are going on in the US right now with ICE and Indigenous people. This is a story called Borders by Thomas King in 1993. However, a recent controversy showed that Thomas King isn't actually Indigenous. He thought he was because he grew up under the impression that he was Cree or partially Cree because his parents weren't really that present in his household, but he went on to investigate this himself and he found out that he didn't have any Indigenous blood. However, he was born and raised in an Indigenous community, and when he made these works, he was under the impression that he was Indigenous, and this is from his Indigenous perspective. So with that being said, I personally think that his work should not be discredited, but you guys may have your own opinions on this. Anyways, Borders is a powerful story about a mother and a son from Blackfoot First Nation traveling from their home to visit a relative. When they reach the Canada-US borders, Officials repeatedly ask the mother to state her nationality, Canadian or American, but she only answers with Blackfoot each time. Because neither country will accept that Indigenous identity, they end up stuck in no man's land between the borders. The author shows how Indigenous people and nations all have unique identities that don't always fit into colonial norms. And throughout all of this, strength and pride in that identity can and should continue. Now, I personally want to tell stories through my films, which is actually the career path that I'm pursuing right now. And using all this information and acknowledging biases can help me to include Indigenous people in my projects and portray them in the right ways. Telling stories using new media can come with many benefits and drawbacks. While the availability of these stories are beneficial and easily accessible, a drawback can be the fact that not everyone can use digital media to educate themselves. But regardless of these drawbacks, I will continue to educate my viewers about Indigenous people through the portrayal of them in my stories, eliminating harmful biases and misrepresentations by educating myself, and I really encourage that we all, as creators in new media, do the same.